Everyone, and welcome to another Quarrier football pregame show. First one of 2021. It's brought to you by the local best. It's where to go before you go. Colin Beckler, Matt Larson with you, and we got a lot to talk about since this is our first pregame show of the season. Already one game under the books for Dell Rapids, losing to Canton last week 28-6. They travel to Sisseton this week, where Sisseton is 0-1, losing to Vermilion last week 38-0. So let's start with last week's game, and then we'll get into the team overview and what's coming ahead for tonight. But trip to Canton last week, number one team, a tough game, 16-0 by halftime.
Yep.
But it seemed like they got the things going there in the second half. A scoreless third quarter, an early score for Dell Rapids, and it was a fairly close game. That score might not indicate how that game was.
Yep.
You know, I went back and watched, and a drive there midway through the fourth that ended on a turnover rather than a score kind of shifted how that game went. So you were there, called the game last week. Thoughts on last week's game against Canton?
Well, we got the ball and we deferred on the kickoff, and so Canton got the ball first, and they scored on their first two drives, looked really well, and kind of the real telltale sign was, the guys up front, a lot of times their running backs were making it to our linebackers and our safeties, so they were constantly making tackles. Every time we would say something and a tackle name, it seemed to be a linebacker or a safety, and that's not something that you want, and so that's... and you look at the Quarriers game, right there in the first half, we only had 2 first downs the whole first half, and then down 16-0, you go into the locker room and you have to make some adjustments. And, they came out, they made great adjustments on defense, a little bit better on that defensive line, like you said, scoreless third quarter, and, then we scored that, and we had to go for 2. We didn't get it, so 16-6, and then the next drive, we're driving down, and it was just off the tip of the hands on a fourth down that would have given us a first down and kept that drive going. But that's really, the telltale signs of what's to come, what we need to work on, and you can't forget you're playing the number one team in the state. Right? And then, but I talked to these guys after the game, and the attitude was good. The morale was high. They know they came out, they played a much better second half, minus the last 2 drives. But I think that momentum carrying in, I think they're going to do pretty well this week.
Well, before we get into this week's keys of the game and what we're going to look forward to tonight, let's look at the team as an overview here, the 2021 team. We've chatted a little bit. It seems a little bit different than last year's team, a little changeover on the offensive and defensive line. What are you seeing here from 2021 Quarriers?
Yeah, we lost a bunch of seniors. Number one, Kobe Mason, he our fullback, our middle linebacker. That guy's hard to replace. He's up at South Dakota State University, and he's doing well. So that's the new look. But like you said, the offensive defensive line, you have some kids in there that haven't started. They've got some playing time, but like we mentioned before, in the first half of the first game, you could tell the inexperience, and you can tell how young they were and not in there. So, but if you look at, these new starters in the backfield, you have Landon Rusink, you have Braden Panconen, you have Ian Mason, all got great time last year in the backfield.
So now we look at Class 11A, and I know it's kind of early, only one game in last week, but it already seems like this could be a wide-open class. We know we got Canton at the top. They looked pretty good last week, and then surprises last week. Lennox scoring 2 touchdowns in 4 minutes to beat West Central. You had Tri-Valley go down to Dakota Valley and win by a point. What do we make of Class 11A at this point in the season?
I've always said that it's probably the toughest class in 11-man football. But you look at it, you have Canton. These, to me, are the 4 teams that can absolutely win the thing. I think Canton, Lennox, I think Madison is very strong, and then put Dell Rapids in that group. Even though we didn't come out strong and play Canton very well, if we meet them in the playoffs, we're going to have that. We're going to have that, familiarity, know what to do, know that we made those adjustments, and everyone can play with everyone here. It is a full 4-quarter game.
So now we take last week's game. We talked about it a little bit, that momentum. What did you see from that second half that should carry over to the Quarriers here into tonight's game at Sisseton?
Yeah, I think the attitude. You're looking at, how do you respond in adversity? And this group of seniors is a different group than I've ever seen. They're so close. They root for each other. They're one collective, cohesive unit, and they all pump each other up. There was no hanging heads. And I think the more you can do that, even in a loss, that's tough for kids. First game, you want to win that, right? But they understood they're playing the number one team in the state. And that third quarter, if that's a telltale sign, we can hang with anybody.
So now we got our second road game coming up. Back-to-back road trips. Canton last week. Long drive up north to Sisseton.
Yep.
What are we looking at for the keys of the game here tonight? We can start with Sisseton. What are they going to look to do here?
Sisseton, they have a pretty good offense. In fact, it's pretty predictable, though. They run a couple different sets. They'll run a double tight, single back, or an I backfield. And they run a lot of dives. They run some motion, and 9 times out of 10, you just need to follow that motion guy, and that's where the play goes. So the keys to the game for Sisseton, what they need to do to do well in this game is they need to control the offensive line, meaning they need to move the ball down the field, okay? They have to get to the outside. I think if they would contain our outsides and get try to get to the sideline, bounce it out to the sideline, and the time of possession. And I think when you control the offensive line, you move the ball, you get those first downs, and then our offense doesn't get to touch the ball. So they got to try to keep it on, and so look for a lot of running from them tonight.
Now, as far as Dell Rapids, carrying over from that Canton game, what are they going to be looking to do tonight for them to pick up a win on the road?
Yeah, I thought long and hard about this one, and Landon Rusink, he's just a phenomenal athlete and a great player. He can do anything on the field. But Braden Panconen, Ian Mason, they need to share the load equally, because we know that they're going to be keying off Landon Rusink. And those other two, Braden and Ian, they're good. They're fast. They can get through the hole quick. And then, number 2, our defensive line has to get more stops. You cannot let those runners get to the next level. And by that, I mean next level to our linebackers and then to our safeties. And we can't have them making the majority of the tackles. So we really have to focus, and I hope we made some adjustments there. And then, one of the things in the first half that made an adjustment on, and I know they did better in the second half, but anytime Austin Henry had a pass play where he would roll out to the right or the left, he had no time. So they need to protect him. In the second half, he did a little better, but we went in a shotgun formation, and he was able to stand up tall, get the ball, and to be able to find these receivers or also feel the pressure and know what to do from there. So those are my keys for Dell Rapids tonight.
All right. Well, we've got kickoff at 7 o'clock up at Sisseton. It's football weather here at the beginning of September. A little overcast, cool, and cloudy. Big difference from last week's weather down at Canton. So any final thoughts before tonight's kickoff?
Yeah, we did come away with that game with an injury. Chase Jones, the first defensive set that we had. So right away after kickoff, he breaks his left thumb, okay? And he sustained it, and he was, I was talking to him, and he said he thought it was jammed. And he's pulling on it thinking, well, lo and behold, his parents take him in Saturday afternoon to Orthopedic Institute. It's broke. So he is our starting cornerback or free safety, depends on what formation we're in. So he had surgery on Tuesday, and they actually put a pin in there. And I was just messaging his mom that, how long is this going to take? What are we looking at for recovery time? And she thinks that if everything goes as planned, and in this kind of injury, the doctor says it's fairly common, and that they think he can be back by the Lennox game if everything goes to plan. So in lieu of that, you're going to have Aiden Beckler and Jack Henry are going to be the two starting safeties tonight, where last game they rotated those two. So now they'll both be in a starting role.
All right, well, we're looking forward to the ball game tonight. You'll have the call in the game, following the Quarriers all season long, so be sure to tune in. The kickoff is at 7 o'clock right here on BigSouMedia.com.